Let's move on to a more fun story. Elon Musk and Twitter. What a whirlwind of things that have happened here. So we brought you previously the news that Elon Musk had bought about a 9.7% stake in Twitter, which makes him officially the largest shareholder of that company. That spawned all sorts of takes because Elon has much more of a free speech view and wants to change the product. So then Twitter announced that after discussion with Elon, the CEO said that Elon Musk would be joining the board of directors. Now, why that's important is because Elon, if he joined the board of directors, would be subject to fiduciary responsibilities as a member of the board, meaning that he could not take actions publicly which could possibly impact the stock price, which would open up shareholder lawsuits. But number two, and this was underreported, was that as part of his shareholder agreement with the board of directors, was he said is that he would not acquire more than a 14.9% stake in the company, meaning that he would not increase his ownership stake, which could then lead to the grounds for a hostile takeover. That was the ground that was set until yesterday morning when Parag Agarwal made a shock announcement. He's the CEO of Twitter. Let's put this up there on the screen. He says, Elon has decided not to join our board. Now here's the note that he sent to his team, and I'm going to read a lot of this. Elon Musk has decided not to join our board. Here's I can share what happened. The board and I had many discussions about Elon joining the board with Elon directly. We were excited to collaborate and clear about the risks. We also believed having Elon as a fiduciary of the company, where he, like all board members, has to act in the best interest of the company and our shareholders, was the best path forward. The board offered him a seat. We announced on Tuesday Elon would be appointed to the board contingent on a background check and formal acceptance. Elon's appointment to the board was to become officially effective on 4/9. But Elon shared that same morning he will no longer be joining the board. I believe this is for the best. We have and will always value input from our shareholders, whether they're on the board or not. Elon is our biggest shareholder. We will remain open to his input. There will be distractions ahead, but our goals and priorities remain unchanged. The decisions we make, how we execute, is in our hands, no one else's. Let's tune out the noise and stay focused on the work and what we're building. All eyes on that last paragraph. There will be distractions ahead.
Sounds ominous.
There is a particular little hint as to what happened. Let's put this up there on the screen, which is Elon actually deleted a lot of his tweets which were critical of the Twitter product, but a very conspicuous like, which said this in response. Let me break this down for you. Elon became largest shareholder for free speech. Elon was told to play nice and not to speak freely. And Musk actually liked that tweet. Now, the reason that this matters, Krystal, let's go ahead and put the CNBC piece up on the screen, is that Elon is no longer bound now by the agreement that he made with the board not to take up to a 14.9% stake in the company. He could now, if he wanted to, pursue a hostile takeover of the company where he could acquire as much of a share as he wanted within the company and then cobble together other pieces with large shareholders or possibly even retail shareholders and force changes both at the CEO board level, but also in terms of governance at the company itself. So this could have an extraordinary impact on Twitter, the company. Now, the real question obviously everyone's asking is, why should I care? Well, because Twitter, yes, by only having 300 million daily active users, is disproportionately impactful on the elites of news, of politics, sports, pretty much everything. And so with that disproportionate impact, their content policy, how the company is run and more, has a huge impact on the way that you receive information from basically all aspects of your entire life.
Yeah, I mean, just to be, give you one really specific example, is Trump going to be on Twitter during the next campaign, right? I mean, just that decision alone is extraordinarily consequential. And it's not just the possibility that Elon could execute a hostile takeover here. It's also that if he was sitting on the board, he would have a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of the company and of its shareholders specifically. Now that he's not on the board, he's not under that obligation. So it wouldn't have to go so far as a hostile takeover. You can understand. So I can understand why, the CEO, the board members, the other major shareholders, I can understand why they're nervous about this. Because ultimately, regardless of how you feel about, Elon's ideology versus Parag Agrawal, this is also about control. And it's about power, and it's about who actually is directing the future of this platform, which is extraordinarily significant and central to our ability to communicate and the way elites process information in this country. So I understand why they're kind of freaked out, but there's a lot of reporting of like employees freaking out, which makes a little bit less sense to me. I mean, I guess ultimately it's also, they're probably more comfortable with Parag's interpretation of, his basic rejection of the First Amendment and free speech. So they are nervous about what this will ultimately mean for them. I mean, you guys know my overall view is, I feel about Elon the way I feel about every billionaire. They are acting in their own self-interest. He has used Twitter in ways that has been sanctioned by the SEC. Even in this deal, let's go ahead and put the next element up on the screen. So he waited to file his disclosures with the SEC 11 days. So he was 11 days late in publicly declaring that he had amassed a large stake in Twitter. So once you acquire a certain amount, you're supposed to immediately publicly disclose that. So he was 11 days late in doing that. While he was doing that, he continued to acquire Twitter stock at that low price. Then, once after belatedly his stake is disclosed, of course, the Twitter stock price went through the roof, and he personally benefited to the tune of $159 million. 156, sorry. So here's the Washington Post. Elon Musk delayed filing a form and made $156 million. I mean, this is securities fraud, whether it was intentional or incidental. He ends up, as billionaires always do, on top. Even if the SEC ends up fining him for this, he made $156 million. The fine is liable to be a couple of $100,000 at the most. So he makes a massive profit here. And this harkens back to other ways he has used Twitter to his own benefit. Back in 2018, he had to enter into a consent decree with the Securities Exchange Commission for allegedly misleading investors when he tweeted he'd gathered enough funding to take Tesla private. Musk paid a $20 million fine and agreed to step down as chairman and vet his tweets with lawyers. Last month, he asked the SEC to scrap that agreement. He also has pushed the rules by polling his Twitter followers on whether he should sell a 10% stake in Tesla. And the Wall Street Journal also reported in February the SEC was investigating a stock sale by Musk's brother a day before that tweet. All of this is to say that he may be genuinely committed to free speech, but also keep in mind that his free speech on Twitter is something that he has used in order to profit him directly. My overall view here is that with all of these tech companies, these tech giants, and the problems that they have created for discourse in the public square, the answer is not going to be to sort of like libertarian entrepreneur our way out of it. There's going to have to be government regulation because we cannot depend on the whims of which billionaire happens to be at the helm for when all of our public discourse ultimately depends on these platforms. So if he wants to get involved in being part of that broader solution and not just sort of screwing around with Twitter here, that would be something I would be much more interested in.
Yeah, and part of the issue too is assembling a hostile takeover like coalition would just be very difficult. I went ahead and pulled who the other top investors are in the company. It's Vanguard, Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, and State Street Corp.
Cool.
Good luck convincing them in order to join a coalition so that you can enforce more free speech policy. All of those people benefit from not having more free speech on the platform. The other issue here, which is kind of interesting, is that Twitter's governance structure is actually set up differently than all other companies. So for example, Facebook and Google are set up such that Zuckerberg and Sergey Brin and I'm forgetting his name, is Larry Page, all have mega controlling voting power in the company.
Right.
Meaning that even though they don't own the vast majority of shares, they set it up as like a Class A and a Class B structure where Class B shares have 10 times the voting power of a Class A share, which means that they'll always remain in total control of what they can do. Twitter does not have that because they don't have a single founder. They had a founding team and they've had a real mess of a governance structure. So they're actually much more rife for hostile takeovers.
Yeah.
But it also makes it so that all these investors can throw their weight around. So that there could be a big fight here, is more what I'm saying. Elon is not the de facto winner by any means.
There's also a real possibility that he's basically just trolling. I mean,
oh yeah, definitely.
You know, I mean, that's certainly a possibility here is he's just being sort of a shit disturber and trolling and throwing his billionaire weight around. Because, I mean, listen, this is a guy who's got a lot of other stuff going on. Is he really, like, if you were going to actually do the hostile takeover and then, you know, influence them in this way or that way and sort of take control of the helm, like, that takes a lot of time and a lot of focus. And he's certainly got the money to do it, but does he have the personal bandwidth or desire to make that a core part of what he's up to? I think that's a big
He's building question. 2 other companies. The vast majority of his attention should be on Tesla and SpaceX. I frankly prefer it that way, but you know. It's interesting nonetheless. I am enjoying the Twitter employees freaking out.
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.